So he said, I'm writing this book for longevity. He didn't say for health. He didn't say for fighting disease. So that's where the term Ayurveda comes from, which is two words, Ayush and Ved. Ayush means live long. And Veda means wisdom or knowledge or understanding or science, whatever word you want to put it. But so it's Ayurveda is really how to maintain your longevity. It's a science that indicates appropriate and inappropriate, wholesome and unwholesome, happy and sorrowful conditions of living.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, where you can find a large selection of Om and yoga clothing, spiritual jewelry, and unique fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now here's your host, Ashton Szabo.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Savannah Podcast. Our show today is all about Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. Our guest today is Dr. Prana Gogia. He's a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine. He's a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and a teacher of Ayurveda and craniosacral work. He was born in India, and he spent over 30 years studying and practicing healing work in the lineage of the Siddha tradition, and he's traveled extensively through the Himalayan regions of Tibet, Nepal, and India, learning meditative and healing practices. I'm really excited to have him on the show today. Prana, welcome.
Thank you, Ashton. Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to have you. And as a quick little comments for our guests, we've known each other for a number of years, and actually years ago, you gave me my first copy of the Devi Mahatmayam, which is a text about the goddess that quite radically changed not only my practices but my perspectives, and I was very much centered in the more Shaivite traditions and more of that looking to the beyond instead of looking at the world and the embodied experience, and that text really shifted my perspective, and I hold so much respect for you and appreciation for giving me that book that one day. So thank you so much for that. And we've talked about too getting you on the show at some point to talk about the goddess more, which is something I plan to do in the future with you. But for now, we're talking about Chinese medicine or Oriental medicine and Ayurveda. And what I think is wonderful is that you're so experienced in both. And I think there's a lot of wonderful similarities. There's also some really key differences that are worth noting, and those are some of the things I want to talk to you about. Before we get into that conversation, though, perhaps you could give our listeners a little bit of your story and your background, how you got involved with Ayurvedic medicine and Oriental medicine, and some of your travels, perhaps. Let us know a little bit more about how you came to all this work.
Yeah, so I started my journey in childhood because I used to be very sick as a child. And because of Western medicine, were able to help me in only acute sense. So if I have any kind of typhoid or liver disease or any kind of malaria, then it was good to get those medicines. But my immune system was very weak because I was born a little early. So I went into incubator for a week or so, and then pregnancy was not easy for my mom. So all of that kind of made my immune system to be weak. So I fought diseases as a young boy and adult a lot for first 7-8 years, almost paralyzed. I was more on medicine than on actually candies. And that kind of popped me into point where, and penicillin reacts with me, so they can only give sulfamethoxazole, which is a systemic antibiotic, which will destroy not just bacteria, but also your organs. So it fights blindly, let's put it that way. And penicillin is very targeted, but I react. So they just gave me sulfamethoxazole. I get to a point where in a small, like a seasonal flu, I will need 2,300 to 34 milligram of sulfamethoxazole, which is a high dose for a kid of 7 or 8 years old. And only my pediatrician will give, because all of the doctors will be scared to give beyond 300 or 400 or 500 milligram. Mm-hmm. So it was getting more and more difficult to just live a normal life because I keep falling sick every 3 months, 2 months. And that's where I started working on Ayurveda because I was lucky to have my grandmother and mother who started teaching me like work and diet and all. And then I found a Kapalik Siddha teacher who serendipitously wandering around in my neighborhood because they usually don't go around in places. They just come out from mountains or caves for getting some food and then they go back. So they don't have a prescribed path that they'll follow this path or that path and get money or some food. And that's how I found him. And then I started talking to him. And then over the time, every 3 months or 2 months or 4 months, whenever I had time, whenever he was wandering around, I'll sit down and study with him. That kind of went on while I was doing my schooling. And in India, the parents always want you to become either engineer or a doctor. So I ended up being an engineer. So I was professionally actually an engineer all the way up to 2009. And then while coming to US, I realized, so by the time I came to US, I had practiced Ayurvedic medicine for a long time. And by 14, I was off from all medications, all doctors, anything. So from age 14 till now, I haven't had touch with any big hospitalization or big diseases or anything. I've been able to maintain health and living through just Ayurvedic practices. In 1983, I came across Dr. Stone's work. Dr. Stone discovered polarity therapy. That's how we know Dr. Stone. He spent last 10 years of his life in India in an ashram. I used to go to that ashram, and that's how I came across something called osteopathy. But I had no idea what osteopathy is. I only studied polarity therapy because that's his books was, and that's what he wrote about. It was in 2003, then 2002, I came across craniosacral work. But in 2000, when I was in East Coast in Boston, I realized there is no alternative to Western medicine, a real alternative to Western medicine in US. Chinese medicine is there, and it's slowly developing to get to become a complementary and traditional medicine that can support ongoing quest for health. Western medicine is the primary medicine, and that's where I realized that I should try to work to see how much Ayurveda can come. And then I found out Dr. Lad is there in New Mexico. He practices in New Mexico, but his practice is focused on you going to New Mexico, and he has traveled around, but he practices more or less under a very cautionary practice. In other words, he kind of goes around and stays within the bounds so that he doesn't get sued. He almost got sued 3 times. And the rest of the Ayurvedic medicine in US is more under spas, like Chopra Center Spa or Raj Spa or this spa or that spa. So most Americans know Ayurveda only as just a spa medicine. You get some massage, get some meditation, get some really good talk from Chopra, and you got some Ayurvedic medicine. That's really not Ayurveda. What I studied Ayurveda is it saved my life. Western medicine is good. It has its own place. But there is a place for Ayurveda because Ayurveda's focus is about how do you live in harmony with your inner and outer nature. And that's, in a brief, my story. And then in 2000, when I said I'll start going into the direction of Ayurveda, for 10 years, I procrastinated getting any degree because everybody said, if you really want to practice medicine, you have to be MD or an acupuncturist. Everything else is kind of under the garb of spa or any kind of touch work, but it's not really medicine. It's more like relaxation and maybe supplementation and like that. They don't consider it as a medicine. So for 10 years, I kind of procrastinated while going and doing my engineering, working with technology people and corporates. And then in 2009, I decided to take a year break. And then in 2010, I just said, I'll just need to get through getting the doctorate in Oriental medicine. That's how I got to having Oriental medicine. The good part of having a license of Oriental medicine is you can practice most of Ayurveda. It doesn't stop you from giving herbs and practicing Ayurveda in the sense of how we practice Ayurveda traditionally in India.
Gotcha. Well, and you mentioned briefly about what Ayurveda is in terms of living in harmony with your surroundings and whatnot. What would you say are the principal ideas behind Chinese medicine?
It's very similar. If you look at from that perspective, both medicines have entangled roots. That's how I use the word. Yes, they are separate roots. They have their own separate teachers and books, but the roots of both medicine are entangled. You can't, if you go deeper and deeper into both medicine, you reach to the point where you start seeing that these roots share common connections. These roots go dig deeper into the common way of thinking, living, feeling, sensing as a medicine. And they both focus on inner and outer harmony of our being.
What would you say are some of those key roots that are intertwined with one another? What are the big similarities that you find working with Ayurvedic medicine and Oriental medicine?
The Oriental medicine is a wide spectrum of word that kind of prescribes to anything that is in East, Far East. Mm-hmm. So South Asian medicine will be what is a medicine in India, Sri Lanka, like that. And East Asian medicine, which is now called Oriental medicine, which probably someday will be called East Asian medicine, is in Korea, Japan, China, Taiwan. All of that will be called Oriental medicine. Mm-hmm. It's as of what today we know it. The roots of all of those go into Taoist, Buddhist, and also the work of medical men who didn't have any actually religion, but they lived more of a natural forest life. So it's not focused on any religion as such, Oriental medicine. Most people get confused with that. And the common between both of those, Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, as I said, is to live in harmony. And Taoist is one of the biggest influence on Chinese medicine, and so is Buddhist. And both of those have root in that the disease does not have a specific cause only in physical aspect of our body, chronic disease specifically. When I talk about disease, I'm focusing on chronic disease, not acute disease, not that you broke a bone or you had an accident or you had a bad food and then you have a stomachache. Those are all acute. Those are all fine. But the chronic disease, which is what the most humanity suffer from being miserable because that disease never goes away, have roots deeper across the board from spiritual, energetic, emotional, physical. And same thinking is in Chinese. They both have the same understanding. They both use to harmonize, and they both depend upon correspondence and correlations. Ayurveda and Chinese don't think in terms of cause and effect. There is no causality as a prime notion. Like we look for disease, that means there is a cause, and we eliminate the cause, disease will eliminate. That's how the Western medicine, scientific mind thinks. Ayurveda and Chinese medicine both think in terms of correspondence and correlations. In other words, you have a weather pattern. Weather corresponds to certain patterns. Same thing in Ayurveda and Chinese. They both look for patterns that corresponds to healthy living. And if the current pattern is not in harmony with healthy living, then you have a disease.
Well, it's interesting because in Western thought, the idea of correlation not being causation is one that kicks up a lot of energy in the debate. Where I find it so interesting that in the West, it's all about causation, and they tend to discredit the idea of correlation. Where the Eastern perspective is like, no, let's look at the correlation between things because the causation might not always be exactly what we think it is. I look at even what we call in the West the placebo effect, where it's like, okay, well, we have to take our data and we have to sort of just put aside a certain amount of the data because of this thing we call the placebo effect, which means that if people think that something's going to do it, it actually does it. And so we have to just throw away that part of the data. And in other parts of the world, they're like, wait a second, you mean to tell me that if we have somebody think they're doing something, they're actually going to get that physical response from it? Let's study that more. Let's not throw away that data. Let's try to figure it out more and develop that more. And it's a very, very specific thing that I notice about the difference of the approach from the Eastern and Western perspective. But you mentioned something about in terms of Ayurveda and Oriental medicine and how they're both looking at a more kind of energetic experience. One thing that I'm confused about or kind of struggle with, though, is that while they're both energetic in their foundation, the actual map of their energetic understanding is quite different. While we can say, well, there's similarities between the meridians of the Chinese medical system and the nadis of Ayurveda, they are definitely different things that they're talking about. Yes, they're both energetic. So I'd love to get your opinion on that. Like, what is the difference or the similarities, or how do you reconcile the apparent differences of nadis from one system and the meridian system from the other?
So it's easy to get confused at that level. because it's about correspondence and correlation. Oh, by the way, Western mind does use correspondence and correlation. It's that's how I figured out that there is a way to get into. It's called systems thinking. If you know the pioneers of systems thinking, they all use correspondence and correlation, including how we use in management, how we use in weather pattern, how we use in politics about probability distribution. All of those are actually correlation and correspondence. It's very much used. But when it comes to medicine, we kind of go after causality and causation, because that's how the West medicine is still stuck in that Aristotelian reductionist method. I haven't got into the level of incorporating systems thinking and systems biology into it. It's getting there, but it's slow. Coming to the map in energetic, the way I explain to my students is, say, if I give you 3 maps of Southern Manhattan, one is a fairy map that you can go around the Southern Manhattan and from one place to place, and I give you another map of subways or tubes or tunnel through which the trains are going. And third is the roadways. If you look at all 3 maps, you study all 3 maps for next 6 months. Actually, no, even you pick one map and you study for next 6 months, do you think you know Manhattan? So from map, you can never see, feel, sense, and experience what is reality. Maps only give you inspiration. They give you direction. Once you are on the train, you don't need a map. You need a map to get to the train station, look for the timing, know where the train is going, get onto the train, then your journey starts. Then you throw away the map. That's all about experience. 2 maps of the same city will give you different perspective of the city, but no map can actually tell you this is the whole city. And map can never teach you. Most people get confused that if I have a book, I have a map, I understand. So if you can spend the rest of your life studying a Vedic book, you're never going to understand what really they mean by the reality until you actually take a journey through that map and actually have that. Once you have that, then the book you'll throw it. Nobody carries timetable around once they're in the train. And once you have been into the many trains for 6 months, 8 months, and you know what train goes where, you don't even need a damn timetable. You just know where the train is and how to get onto it and take a journey. Same thing it is. Chinese medicine provides a map. Ayurvedic medicine provides a map. Two maps may have a same milestone. They can use same names of the places, but you are not going to use one map. You're not going to use a ferry map to get onto a train station. You will be all lost. You think that the ferry map is exactly same as train station map. You will never get anywhere. You'll be just going around and round, figuring out why this doesn't work. And that's what most people get confused about. And they come up there, oh, Chinese medicine doesn't work, Ayurveda doesn't work, because they are using one map in a different territory. But all the territories are different aspects of the same reality. And you have to understand that, which means both medicine require that somebody to train and teach. It is not a causation-based medicine that you can take cause and effect from a book and have an exact equation and create an experiment in lab and you're done with it. It doesn't work. Somebody has to actually help you to take that journey. Once you have that journey, then it's yours. What you understand from causation correlation becomes an art. There is a science and art that way, if you think that way. So, but these are all maps, and there are milestones they connect with, and there are milestones they look same. And if you understand both maps, you have taken journeys in train and in ferries and on the roadways, then you can craft the best possible way for somebody to take a journey.
Well, and you said something too. You said you mentioned teaching, and I'm interested in that in the sense of, do you see, perhaps in contrast to Western doctors, do you see Oriental doctors and Ayurvedic practitioners more in the role of a teacher than just a doctor or a health practitioner, where they're actually educating the person about their body? They're talking about these roadmaps and landmarks so that they can learn and be empowered in their health, instead of just, okay, well, I've got this knowledge over here, you don't have it, I'm not going to teach you about it, but if you take this pill and pay me this money, then you'll probably feel better. Would you say that's do you see yourself as, I know you teach obviously, but do you see as a general sense that Ayurvedic practitioners and Oriental medical doctors are just as much teachers as they are health practitioners?
Yes, it's true. They both are teachers and health practitioners. It is, we in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine both talk about the person should take responsibility of their health. In fact, the root text of Ayurveda, which we use, there are 3 root texts in Ayurveda. Charak Samhita is the main one. Charak is considered also father of modern Ayurveda. And it's 81 chapters, over 81 chapters. But in the after 8th chapter, he actually describes practice management. So it's like immediately after the theory, he says, in order for you to put an application of this, what I'm teaching you of the basic principles and theories, you need to understand what is practice. Usually, if you go to the schools in West, in medicine anywhere, Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine, or Western medicine, the practice management or even chiropractic school, practice management is added at the end. It's like thrown at the end. Oh, by the way, there is a practice you need to do. And so here is the things. Go market yourself, go do this, go laws and understand the risk. And that's what they call practice management. But Charak said, no. Before you even understand how to apply, you need to know what is practice management. And then he describes the roles of everybody, the responsibilities of everybody, including doctor, patient, technician, therapist, how the place should look like, how should you greet, how should you have things done that in a way that is required. And he says, for a patient, it's important that they have a courage. That means they want to face the disease, not like fix me. I don't have a courage to face myself. Here's the money. Go fix me. You take care of me. That means they don't have a courage. Support is a different thing. But a patient should have a courage to say, I have a disease. I need to deal with it. They should have a good memory, that they should understand what happened to them and can recall it. They should follow the instructions in a way that it's conducive to their environment and their mind. And then finally, the 4th, he says, the patient should be able to tell the truth. If they can't tell you truly what happened to them, you can't read them. So he goes on going all of those. So in a way, practitioner becomes like a teacher, supporter, and also a healthcare practitioner. But without having a participation of a patient, it won't happen. So the patient has to see, the person has to come and say, I need to learn what's going on with me. But some people don't. So in those cases, you just give them pill and herbs, and it's called treating root and treating branch. Treating branch is, I give you something, you feel better, you go home and forget about it. Treating root is when you have a chronic disease that the branch keeps appearing. You suppress from here, it comes from there. You suppress from there, it comes from there. Then the patient says, where is the root? And that's where the conversation starts.
Well, and I appreciate that so much. I mean, I appreciate Western medicine, in particular, its emergency medicine. I mean, thank goodness we have and have developed the stuff that we have, because it's allowed and saved so many lives. But one area that Western medicine really struggles with is preventative medicine or holistic medicine, where we're really treating health instead of disease. And that's something that I feel that Oriental medicine and Ayurveda does much more skillfully, where it's really concerned with keeping the person healthy. So health becomes more of the focus instead of the disease being the focus. And I'm wondering, because it's approached that way, because it's approached in a way of, okay, well, we're not looking at what's just solely of like, okay, this is broken and where do we fix it, but rather how do we support the whole system? One of the things that I used to come across that I love is, you never find maggots or flies in an empty trash can. So, I mean, when you're keeping the system itself healthy, then you don't tend to get as much disease coming in because the system is robust and can handle itself. And I'm wondering, given your experience, if you could, give our listeners, because it's not as specific as like, okay, well, you've got this disease, this problem, and this is what's going to be fixed, but rather like, hey, we can all get healthier from our baseline. What are some things, perhaps both from Ayurveda and Oriental medicine that kind of combine together, or just acting separately, that our listeners can apply in their lives to help, as a general sense, with their overall health?
Ayurveda's definition itself is the big, because it took a long time, actually, World Health Organization to recognize Ayurveda as a world medicine. Why? Because Ayurveda's definition does not define itself treating disease. So they knew from the day one that if we focus on disease, that all our investment will be on fighting disease. Ayurveda even didn't care about having healthy, actually. Charak says in his document when he wrote the book, he says, the reason I'm putting this summary of bigger text, it was Charak Samhita is a summary of a larger text called Agnivesh Samhita, which is much more larger and it's lost in the history. And he says the reason Agnivesh I'm summarizing is because people are not living fully. His focus in Vedic focus is always about inner quest, why I'm here, who am I, what is me that is not body, what was I before I was a body. All of those questions can only be answered by a person when they have lived the life fully. So Ayurvedic philosophy is based upon that. Yes, you should be born, you should live like a child, enjoy life like a child, get into the married life, enjoy the fruits of married life, sensuality, money, practice, all of it, and then raise your family, and then get to the point where you have done all that and you say, now I need to focus on what I really came here for. What am I really as a human? And that to require you to live a full life. If you never lived full life, if you never enjoyed having a money, having family, raising, being sensual, then if you sit and start to discover who you are, your mind will keep going another direction because you haven't lived fully. And he was saying, we're talking about 400 BC and 600 BC, he's saying people are not living fully. They're dying early. So he said, people need to learn to live fully so that they can have a chance to actually experience who they really are. So he said, I'm writing this book for longevity. He didn't say for health. He didn't say for fighting disease. So that's where the term Ayurveda comes from, which is two words, Ayush and Ved. Ayush means live long and be prosper. That's the Vulcan, we say greeting. It's the word Ayush, which means when you go to the India and if you bow to an old man, he will say, live long and be prosper, which is actual blessing from in India and from Vedic people, which is the word Ayush, live long. And Veda means wisdom or knowledge or understanding or science, whatever word you want to put it. But so it's Ayurveda is really how to maintain your longevity. So its definition does not even have the word disease. It's a science. Charak says it's a science that indicates appropriate and inappropriate, wholesome and unwholesome, happy and sorrowful conditions of living.
And longevity is a huge concept in Taoism as well, and in Oriental medicine. I mean, that's one of the central ideas is longevity as well, correct?
The Oriental medicine it's like a bag of tools. They don't have a specific one medicine that you can call influenced by. They're influenced by Confucian, they're influenced by Taoist medicine, they're influenced by Buddhist, when the Buddhists travel back and forth. Now they're being influenced more and more by the scientific way. So they keep incorporating everything into Oriental medicine as they learn. But you're right. Immortality, it has been the quest of Oriental sages and kings for a long time, which is longevity. Taoist monks' focus has always been about how do you live long so you can. But in the end, the longevity is not the goal. The goal is inner practice. Mm-hmm. And both of these medicine, the role is can you live in changing continuous environment and seasons, and your internal changing continuous environment and season, which is you're growing and changing. So is the world around you, so the season around you. And how do you live in harmony so that your longevity can help you to focus on your ultimate goal?
So we've been talking, and I've been hearing from you some concepts and ideas, in essence, theory. But as you mentioned yourself, the importance of practice. Do you have anything that comes to mind that your average everyday person who wants more longevity can put into practice, that they can put into play in their lives to start to see some basic results of, okay, I'm feeling a little more complete, I'm living a little more fully because I'm in, again, we can correlate health with being able to live life more fully, because if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, then you're likely more stressed, you can't do as much and all that. But again, trying to be mindful of how I say that based on everything you just said. But I mean, are there some practices that everyone can start to incorporate in their lives to start to apply some of these basic ideas of Ayurveda and Chinese medicine or Oriental medicine?
Both medicine will tell you two things. One, eat locally according to seasons. Mm-hmm. So if we are getting into fall, which we are now in fall and getting towards winter, so eat the fall plants. Eat the fall, because the fall is a dry and windy season. So all the pumpkins and everything that grows around us. It actually is able to live in the dry and windy season. So if you eat the fruits of those seasons, then your body will be able to live in that season. Your body will stay moist, your body will avoid wind and stay warm. So both medicine will tell you eat local and eat according to season. That's one big thing. And both medicine, which now you will have trouble getting into, is because I know the directions a lot of holistic people come from. Both people will tell you food needs to be cooked. There is not much raw other than eating sprouts and nuts and a little bit of cucumber and daikons and radishes and carrots. There is no green raw leaves and green juices and green things. Not because they are bad or good. It's because of two reasons. Both of the medicine will tell you that our body is warm-blooded. When you put cold in the body, Chinese actually say cold is for dead people. They don't even put ice. There is no concept of icing in Chinese medicine or Oriental medicine. We put liniments. They are actually warming to the body. You may feel cooler because it has skin getting cooler, but no cold, whether out in the body or in the body. I mean, I'm saying no means it's not like an absolute. In other words, you can enjoy life and eat once in a while, but not as a regular life sustaining on raw, cold food that is out of the season. Because most of the raw, cold food makes the body temperature lower. And they will avoid. So eat always cooked food and eat according to seasons and according to the environment you live in. Those are foundation of being in harmony.
Well, and of course, I mean, it's something that these medicines focus so much on is food and diet. I mean, I think that one of the principal ideas is that your food is medicine. I mean, it's medicine you're taking, 2, 3, 4 times a day based on your dietary patterns. So it's really important that you are getting not only, people tend to focus so much on organic and non-GMO, but as you said, I mean, we're in a time right now where we have access to food unlike any other time in human history, where not only are we eating things that aren't local, but we're eating things way out of seasons, and it's throwing our immune systems into total whack because we're not, we've got too much access to things instead of recognizing, like you said, of like eating more simply, eating with the seasons is such a huge thing. And I know I've noticed that a lot in my life of when I'm disconnected from that or I'm traveling, I can definitely feel that difference. But when I'm home and more established in eating the local foods. We've got a garden here where we are now, so we can grow more of our own food with the seasons, which has been awesome. But it's definitely something I noticed the effects of in terms of allergies. My allergies are non-existent when I'm eating local food and with the seasons, but I do definitely get allergies if I'm disconnected from that. So I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people miss because they just think, oh, it's organic, but then they're eating something way out of season because it was imported from some other country, which not only has an environmental impact, but also is having an impact on their health. What would you say in terms of both of these medicines, the role of the mind and how it plays into our health and our longevity, our disease?
So both of these medicine, one thing you have to understand, which most people miss it because most people come to these medicine, Western mind comes from learning from school in causations and breaking down things into the parts and then figuring out how to put the parts together in whole. Ayurveda does not have a concept of part at all. There are no parts. Neither does classical Chinese medicine. Both of those medicine have no concept of that your body, your mind, your organs, your living environment, inside and outer environment are kind of parts that are coming together. There is no concept, and it was difficult. The oldest Rig Vedic that talks about Purnata, which literally says there is only whole. Purnata literally means without parts, without two, without being having companion or anything. It's just fullness. It means Purna. Like a full moon is called Purnima, which literally means full. So there is only fullness. Out of fullness, you take something out, you still have fullness. You put something back into the fullness, you still have fullness. It was hard for Western mind to understand this concept until we got into the discovery of holograms and fractals. You take a hologram, you take a bit of a hologram, the whole image can be projected from that hologram. Same with fractal. You take a piece of a fractal, you repeat it again, you have the whole pattern. So when you don't have a concept of parts, you can't separate mind. You can't say that I'm not working with my mind at any point. When you're eating, you're working with mind. When you're sleeping, you're working with mind. When you're ill, you're working with mind. When you're not ill, you're working with mind. So you can't separate. There are no parts. So in Chinese medicine, we don't have a concept of organ separate from emotions. When we talk about in terms of liver as an organ, we don't talk about liver as we talk in Western medicine as a liver, something that is in your right upper quadrant as a big organ that is metabolizing all the food and generating bile. That's all most often Chinese and Western medicine thinks. But in Chinese medicine, liver is that moves every aspect of your body's qi, we call it. And liver's role is to make the things move smoothly. Your thoughts are moving smoothly, your peristalsis is moving smoothly, you're thinking smoothly, your emotions are smooth, you're not stressed. All of that is liver, including your sinews are working well, your tissues are working well, your nutrients are going into the body, your waste is coming out of the body. All of those motions that are happening smoothly in the body is governed by liver. So there is no separation at all in terms of mind and body, and all of that came afterwards when the Western mind started reflecting and trying to fit it into the Aristotelian, or in terms of how we see the religion and culture that is up there and down here, and we need to come together, we are broken, we need to become whole. There is no concept of that. It was all added on the top because we didn't understand from a Western mind, what does it mean that there is no part? I see all the part, I see you there, I am here, we are separate. But that's not how Vedic sees. Doesn't see any separation at all. Doesn't see any broken down into part that I am here, this nation is here, and that nation is there, and the world is here, and earth is there, and there is nothing. There is no separation. Mm-hmm. Taoist work describe inner world of a body as if it's nature. It describes in terms of oceans, it describes in terms of rivers, it describes in terms of mountains and valleys and winds and sun and heat and all of that. That's how the Taoist Chinese medicine describe human body. The nadis in Chinese medicine are just called rivers. Great rivers are called great oceans, or you call them meridians in English, but they don't call it meridian. They just call it great oceans. There are mountains and valleys and all of them. Ayurveda describes as cosmos. It says what is outside in the cosmos is all inside. Every star, every wind, every earth, every movement is in you. So there is no that separation. But we see that as a separation and we start trying to bring things together. But we have to understand that hasn't helped yet. It only helps in organizing things in outer world, but beyond that, it doesn't. So you can't separate. Everything affects mind. And your mental attitude affects healing work.
So always looking at the whole, as you're saying, instead of just trying to pick apart the parts. There is one thing that I'm curious of, and you might have kind of already answered this earlier, but it's something that just having you on the show, I wanted to bring up, because one of the things that seems very evident and clear to me, where people try to draw a lot of connection, but it's actually quite different. But again, this could be the maps conversation, but I would just love to hear it kind of directly. How do you reconcile the differences between the chakra system that we get with Ayurveda? I don't know if it's not directly linked to Ayurveda, but this idea is from yoga and things like that, of the chakras that fit in line with the nadis. In contrast to the dantians of Taoism and Chinese medicine, where, you know, on one side, these are swirling energy vortexes in the spine. The other one, they're in line with the spine, but they're not in the spine. And they're more energy storers than they are, you know, these transmitting orbs. I mean, they're definitely different. You know, and people love to make that connection all the time. But to me, I you know, having studied both as well, they seem so different to me. How do you reconcile those differences? Or is it simply going back to that issue again of like, hey, they're different maps. You know, I mean, do they both, in your mind, exist somewhere in a physical sense? Are they metaphors for other things? Where do you fall in the category of chakras and dantians and things like that?
So dantian falls in the Taoist cosmology, and chakras falls into the Vedic cosmology, and specifically the tantric yogic side of Vedic cosmology. When we talk about, I'll take the chakras first, and then and then it'll become evident how there is similarity and where people have difference of opinion as well. If you think in terms of word itself, chakra, it literally means something that is whirling. So if you have something rotating in circular fashion, we call it chakra. Chakra, you have to understand in Sanskrit, everything is no thing. Sanskrit is designed on a Vedic philosophy that there are no things, only processes, only functions. So there are really no objects or things in terms of Vedic cosmology. So when we say chakra, we define chakra something that is rotating in circle. So if the wheel is rotating in circle, it's chakra. If earth is rotating in circle, it's chakra. If your palm has a thumbprint that is circular fingerprint, that we say you have a chakra in your thumb. So chakra is something that is circular rotation. It is not a thing. First thing, don't get confused. There are no things in Vedic world, period. And there are no objects. They are all things that are in motion. Like Taoists say, everything is nothing but a motion or a change. Because in the end, Taoists focus on I Ching, knowing the changes. Same thing in Vedic. Everything is nothing. There are no things. So now if you think in terms of something reeling inside the body, what will make things go around in a circular fashion? If you have winds, we call it. If you ever see a thunderstorm, it's the winds that are reeling around. It's because the many streams of air come together, and because of pressure difference, they start to create a vortex. Same thing in our body. There are winds, we call it chi or prana. Chi in the Chinese medicine, prana in the Vedic or Ayurvedic medicine. When the streams of those chis are flowing, and when they come across each other, when they cross each other as a currents, it creates a rotating, whirling force. That becomes chakra. Now in the body, there are 7.2 million winds that are flowing through, according to Vedic, Tantric, and Yogi. How many vortexes you think it will form? 7.2 million streams that are flowing through the body. Millions of them. So there is no 1 chakra or 6 chakra or 7 chakra or 5 chakra. Every chakra map is itself a sub-map. Somebody will give you 3 chakras, somebody will give you 14. Lineage I come from, Kapalik Siddha, has 14 chakras. How many are you going to count now? There are Tibetan Buddhists, they will only use 3 chakras. So the places, it's like me saying, how many cities are between San Diego and San Francisco? Roughly, you'll say Santa Barbara and LA.
If you're from LA, you would just say LA because that's the only city.
But if you're picky and you're looking at the map and you're counting every town and village comes on I-5, you'll find several of them. So depending upon who is the tradition, depending upon what is the journey you're taking, depending upon how far and deep you want to go in your travel and tradition, that's how it will be. So Dantian basically points to 3 chakra map. The traditional Western mind thinks in terms of 6 plus 1, 5 plus 1. It's another map. I can tell you there are millions of them. And there are 7.2 million channels. 72,000 channels come together in your heart center. Around the heart, there are so many chakras. Marma is every marma, which is 108 marmas in the Ayurveda, Vedic. There are 108 chakras, all of those. Includes those, the traditional 6 people think in terms of spine. But they're everywhere. There are some on the main highways, cities. There are towns and villages that are off highway. So most people think in terms of between here and San Francisco, only I-5. But people can go around through airways, through flight, through stream, through oceans. They will see different cities. They will see different landmarks. They will see different places. It's about the journey in the end, because both Taoist and Vedic talk about taking a journey. Depending upon your tradition, depending upon who you talk to, depending upon your teacher, they'll prescribe different way of getting there. They'll prescribe different way of avoiding things and getting through the things and experiencing things. So yes, in the end, they are maps, but they all talk about the same body. It's the same reality, same journey you're going to take inside, and same physiology, same emotional, same energetics. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I love kind of both your definition of chakra and how that's working then, and you know, recognizing as well these as maps that the terrain is never the same. I always kind of giggle when someone kind of like stands up like, well, no, this chakra is exactly right here in the body and it's not over there. And it's like, dude, I mean, if that works within your system, awesome. If you're describing it that way because you have a reason to describe your map that way, I can fully respect that. But when people start getting arguments like, no, this chakra is right here. It's 2 inches above the navel, not below the navel. And like people start freaking out. I'm like, you're totally missing the point. So, I mean, I appreciate that, the swirling energies and, how what we're describing is not a thing, but rather I don't know if it's an experience, or a process, as you said, which means that process shifts, it changes, it adapts, it's different for everybody. So I like that.
It's like two people sitting in their living room arguing about the journey through Tibet. One from TripAdvisor and one from Travel Guide. They picked up from the local market, and they're both arguing how does it look like in Tibet, but none of them have actually been there.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's so many things that we could continue to go deeper down, just like you mentioned, to go down the rabbit holes and traditions of more thought. And I would love to do that more, but for the sake of time, we're getting towards the end of our show. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about any of the work that you're doing, the best way for listeners to get a hold of you. I know you teach a lot. You're starting to travel a little bit more with your teaching. So tell our listeners where they can get a hold of you and to find out more about the work that you do.
Thank you. The best way to get hold of me is on my website, pranagogia.com, as a one word, PRANAJI, and then acupuncture.com. It describes work I do, describes if I'm doing any teachings. I just finished a cranial sacral workshop I did in San Diego for 2 days. This year, I'm planning just to teach as I'm teaching in Pacific College and then do my practice. Maybe next year I might take people as a group to India and incorporate cranial sacral workshop and yoga retreat sometime in April, May. But the best place to connect with me and find me is Facebook and website. Facebook is dr.pranaji. So that's my Facebook. But website, Facebook, that's the best way. Email, text is the best way instead of calling, because if I'm between the session, I may not pick up. So it's easy, just text me.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. And we'll have those actually listed in the show notes as well. So if anyone's listening and can't write them down, they will be in the show notes in the description. Prana, it's been a joy having you on the show. I hope to get you back sometime so we can talk about the goddess a little bit and get down in that conversation a bit more. But I've really appreciated your insights and everything you've said today. So thank you so much for sharing your passion and understanding with all of us.
Go ahead.
And I was just thinking to our listeners, I'm sure they've learned a lot from listening today. I hope everyone has enjoyed the conversation and had a wonderfully present moment. Thank you, everybody, for listening and joining us today. Namaste. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. If you have a spare minute, please go over to iTunes, leave us a rating and a review. We really appreciate it. And if you're on Facebook, check out our new Facebook group. It's the same name as our blog, Savannah East. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaheast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode. And thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.